This Friday, the SpaceX Dragon capsule is set to make its way back to Earth from the International Space Station. The unmanned spacecraft docked with the station Sunday. It is the first commercially built spacecraft capable of carrying people to do so. The ISS is home to a rotating group of astronauts. Peggy Whitson became the first female commander there in 2007. She spent 665 days in space. That's more time than any other American.
And Whitson also completed 10 spacewalks during her career, the most by a woman. In our Note to Self series, she admitted that her success came with challenges.
Ignore the naysayers, ignore the people who say you can't become an astronaut. Instead, use it as motivation. It will be 10 years of applying before ever becoming an astronaut. The rejections will be discouraging. But in your typical style, you will just keep trying.
And welcome now retired astronaut Peggy Whitson to the table. She's here as part of our coverage leading up to International Women's Day Friday. Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, I started to get teary-eyed. I think you did too. What you have accomplished is so incredible. So it's so great to have you here. And NASA just announced there is going to be the first all-female spacewalk will take place March 29th. We think of space, it tends to be a male-dominated field. How do we get more women involved in what you've done?
Well, I think we need to start earlier. I think it's really important for us to teach young ladies, but pretty much anybody. We need everyone to feel like science is cool, being a geek is cool, and keep that going. Because right now, I think maybe with social media and different things, young people have different priorities on their lives, and we need to maybe emphasize the fact that a career is important.
But I also think that universal message, who were those naysayers? Who were those people that told you you couldn't do it?
I think it was just unbelievable. From where I came from in rural Iowa, it was pretty much unbelievable that I could do these things. Luckily, I had parents who were so supportive all the time. So.
I know, but Peggy, you write in your notes to self that it took you 10 years of rejection.
Yeah.
I'm thinking by year 8, I'd be thinking, well, maybe I should go in a different direction.
I know.
So you go from 10 years of rejection. They now call you Space Ninja is your nickname, which I like. Why is it after you get that many rejections, you still keep going? What was the fascination for you about wanting to be in space?
I wanted to go into space since I was 9 when I watched the Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walk on the moon. And I think that got further reinforced when I graduated from high school and they selected the first female astronauts. And among them were 2 medical doctors and 1 biochemist, and which I ended up getting my degree in, which made me think that, hey, it really might be possible for me to become an astronaut. But 10 years of applying, that was maybe not the smartest thing in the world.
But it worked.
Yeah, but what's interesting too, and people say, well, why, how did you get lucky enough to be the first commander on the station or the first female chief of the astronaut office? And it was that 10 years.
Yeah.
That 10 years is what made me a better astronaut. It made me more prepared. I was doing negotiations in Russia, working with small teams, and I was leading, and all of that actually made me
You were ready.
the person ready to do.
That's a good, yeah.
Peggy, go back to your parents for a second, because some of us are. And when we hear about STEM, people think of the classroom, but the parents create the structure and the groundwork for young women and young men to be able to kind of reach after their dreams. So what was it in particular that your parents?
I think they just believed in me. I remember my mom telling me when I was about 12 that I could be anything I wanted. And I believed her. And I think there's a time frame, at least when I go out to speak to young people, that I notice, from about 8 to 10, 11, 12, in that time frame, children are more receptive to you and you telling them things are possible.
And in your note to self, you wrote, seeing the Earth for the first time in orbit, you will be surprised that you never noticed the quality and texture of colors. Really makes you appreciate the planet that we live on.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, yeah.
You mentioned the mission to the moon. That was a national project. That was one in which space exploration was something a president talked about all the time. What's your feeling about where our country is now in terms of thinking about exploration? Has it moved just all to the private sector now? Is that a good thing?
Oh, we've definitely not moved to the private sector. There's still a NASA in spite of the fact that we haven't launched astronauts from the U.S. in several years. We're still the lead of the International Space Station. It's been generating incredible amounts of scientific research, and those things that we're learning up there, how to maintain our bone density, for instance, is going to be beneficial for us to do these longer missions going out to Mars, et cetera. So all of that is a process, and I think that we're in an interesting place now, that commercialization combining with government, like for instance, SpaceX arriving with Ripley on board this last weekend.
Has Elon called you for advice?
No,
you can maybe.
He hasn't yet, no.
Would you like him to call you?
But
Interesting.
We're combining this commercial capability. It's giving us a little bit more flexibility, maybe a little more innovative ways of doing things that aren't quite as easy to do in a NASA bureaucracy. But NASA's got this huge database of information and knowledge and experience, and the combination of those, I think, can be very fruitful, which is the plan they have for the Lunar Gateway, which will be a small station that'll orbit the moon, and we'll be able to do missions down there, robotic missions and human missions down to the moon's surface, testing out things like solar electric propulsion and using the regolith to mine materials that we're going to use either for fuels and use that space station as a fuel depot to
Just
go
tell
to
us,
Mars.
what does a great day in space look like? You know, when
Every
we see
day.
it, you're just sort of
Every day in
Great.
space.
Would you go
is a
back?
great day. In a heartbeat.
You would go back in a heartbeat. All right, with Gayle.
day is a good day. I'm going to cheer Peggy on.
Peggy, thank you so much. Great to have you on set.